Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to the Bootcamp Blueprint, the place where personal trainers go to grow their bootcamp and social media. I'm super excited for today's episode because we actually have my personal mentor. Now, if you've been following me a while, you know I always work with a mentor. I'm huge in personal development, and I usually work with like a marketing expert, a sales expert, a personal training expert, but this person is actually completely different. He's actually a comedian. And not only a comedian, he's one of the top comedians in the world. He's got over 30 years experience. He's performed over 6,000 shows across 42 states and 7 countries. I believe he's got one of the top rated shows in Las Vegas, if not the top rated show. And look, we're not going to sit here and listen to Matt do stand-up. We could, and that would be very funny. But Matt is now the expert at teaching other people how to use humor to help accomplish their goals. So that's what we're going to chat about today. So anyways, without further ado, we have my personal mentor, the one and only Mr. Matt Kazam. Matt, how are you?
Hey, I'm fantastic, man. Thanks for that introduction. And there are worse ways we could spend the next 30 and 40 minutes than watching me do stand-up. However, I think the science of how I pull off that 30 and 40 minutes is way more powerful in terms of discussing with your audience. Though certainly if no one's seen me do stand-up, you should certainly Google that and check some of that out, because it is the perfect case study for what I teach entrepreneurs like you and everyone around the world, which has been a real powerful way, because people are changing now. And if you want to engage them, you want to bring them into your network and really build it and have them build it for you, you got to be entertaining now. That's the thing. Is I used to teach this probably 15 years ago to people, and I kind of saw it coming, and then got involved with my Vegas show here, and then jumped back in about 2 years ago to teaching it again. And 12 years ago, you were kind of in my business when it came to, just engagement and entertaining and delivering your message. Right now, you're exactly in the same boat I am. So the skills that I use to engage my audiences certainly help people like you, which you've seen firsthand.
I agree. And just for our listeners out there, we're going to cover 3 specific things today. We're going to cover how humor can help with your social media, how humor can help with your boot camps or your personal training, and how humor can help in general life. But just before we get to that, just a little bit more about you, Matt. I like to start all these podcasts with a quote or mantra that inspires you or fires you up. Have you got one for us?
Yeehaw, I don't know, but I don't really have one of those. But one thing, I get up every morning before I put that first foot on the floor, and this was a mindset change maybe 2-3 years ago, where, I was kind of letting the world affect me, in ways that it was hurting my business, hurting my joy level, all that. So before every morning I get out of bed, I go, I cannot control what is going to happen today, but the one thing I can control is how I feel about it, or how I let it affect me. And once I started doing that, then I really became in full control of my thoughts and feelings. And over the course of the day, whether it's boot camp, we hear no way more than we hear yes, but it's how you let those no's affect you, and then that really became a mindset change. And it's something I say every single morning, as opposed to another one that a guy told me, but it doesn't necessarily always help my business now. But he just said, just worry about being funny. And that's something else I think of every morning. It's like, if everything else will take care of itself, as long as I'm funny today, that's what I'm selling to people. That's what they like about me. That's what I'm best at. So if I do what I'm best at and I don't let the world get to me, I probably got a pretty good chance today. So that fires me up, as opposed to something that, is just like a cliche, thing that I might yell at myself in the mirror. You're the best. You're number one, that stuff's never really worked with me, but real tangible advice always has. And science, that's the great thing. Both my brothers are lawyers. My sister's a doctor. My father was an NYU finance professor. I come from a family that loves science, loves the actual factual. Are there real things that I can rely on today other than luck? Because you know what? If anything I've learned in my life, I didn't win the luck lottery, that's for sure.
Love it. And I love both of those things, Matt, and I'm a big fan of both as well. Now, I'd like to go just a little bit about your background there, Matt. Now, you live in Las Vegas, I believe, and obviously important for a comedian. That's where all the big shows are from. Is that how you got into it? Are you from Las Vegas originally? Your parents from Las Vegas?
No, 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 no. I actually grew up in New York City, and started doing comedy. Basically at 3 years old, came out of the womb being able to make people laugh. But it came from a pretty interesting background. My mother is a Russian Jewish girl from New York City. My father is a Persian Iranian Muslim from Iran, and somehow I came out Puerto Rican. That's what I tell people. Nobody ever knows. Which I use a lot to my advantage. Which I always think everyone should use that. But for me, I'm kind of this international chameleon. Nobody ever knows what I am, so I always say, they're Latinos. Latinos always think, I'm Latino, and the Italians always think I'm Italian, and the Persians always think I'm from the Middle East, but a weird combination. Russian Jewish mother, Muslim father, got married in 1964, so pretty crazy background.
Yeah. How'd the families get along?
How do you think they get along? They can't. You watch the news, they can't get along now. I go every Thanksgiving. I had my own holy war going on in my house. They were fighting over who's going to occupy the couch. They couldn't settle on anything. And even after all these years, my mother never knew what a big deal it was, because I have some tattoos. And when I got my first tattoo, my mother goes, "Oh, great! Now you can't be buried in a Jewish cemetery." I'm like, "You think that's the reason I can't be buried in a Jewish cemetery? The fact that you're banging the Ayatollah over there might have something to do with it." But it was a good, I think definitely the Jewish side of my family, comedy used to be done only by a few different type of people here in America, and Jewish people. This was built on the back of Jews. Trust me, comedy, the neurosis of the average, Jewish comic, lends itself to great fuel for material. So, my family loved comedy. Even when I was, an infant, we would sit around and listen to comedy records, and other kids would go outside and play baseball, and I was inside kind of doing little routines that I had memorized for my family. But by 3 years old, I was learning how to do comedy on my own, like making real conscious decisions, performing for family and friends. 10 years old, my parents took me to Las Vegas. I saw my first show ever in Las Vegas, comedy show. Joan Rivers and Shecky Green at the Riviera. Knew right then that that's what I wanted to do with my life. 35 years later, I got my own show in the same room that I saw the show when I was 10 years old. 2 years later, they blow up the casino. But that's the part of the story you got to block out. Otherwise, it's a beautiful tale about a boy and his dream. But
was that a result of your comedy, Matt, that they blew up the studio?
No. And trust me, all my comedian friends remind me that all the time. They're like, "Listen, I've been fired before, but this is the first time they ever blew the fucker up." But it led me to this. And that was the one thing is that, and I do believe that like Vegas being the entertainment capital of the world had its place now. Let me tell you now. Every day people want to be entertained. It's not just like when they go on vacation to Las Vegas. So, it's like, why not? They didn't blow up my casino, not to build another casino, but to build more convention space where people can meet. And that's the other thing, the other part of the business, that if you want to be successful, you're going to have to speak at these events. You're going to have to basically do what I'm doing already. Either it's in real time to just engage and speak and deliver your message to your community, or it's out there to try to, grow yourself as an entrepreneur. You're going to have to go out there, and the expectation now is either engage or die. The human attention span, as everyone's heard before, is about 7 seconds. They say a goldfish is 11 seconds. Okay, the one thing after doing 6,000, over 6,500 shows, I don't even think the human attention span is 7 seconds. I think I think they've already made their decision before they even entered that situation, whether they're going to care or not. And if I use my science, I can steer them my way. But if I don't, you're just hoping. You're basically hoping that these people are going to want to listen when everyone else on the planet is trying to have access to their eyeballs and their brain. So even when you're sitting there and they're in front of you, you think, "Oh, I have such an advantage because I'm here live." But no, the cell phone, what they're doing after that event, what they're doing. People are never just in the moment. But you can bring them in, and humor is great at that.
I agree. I'll tell you right now, my attention span is nowhere near 7 seconds. I'm scrolling through my Facebook feed. You've got maybe 1 or 2 seconds to catch my attention, or I'm scrolling up. And in person, you bore me for more than about 5 seconds. I'm checking my Instagram. So I agree with that.
most of the time we're on the toilet. If you can't engage people when they're on the toilet with nothing else to do, how are you going to do it in regular life? You know, I mean, you know, it's so, and I love that you have that introspective because, you know, if you're going to understand your audience, you have to think about your audience in these ways, you know, and not say, oh, well, you know what, the you know, gurus tell me that people have 7 seconds and I have that much time. I think about yourself. How much of an engagement, how much of an attention span do you have? You're probably ahead of the curve, so it's probably even worse than you are. So always thinking about yourself as the audience member for the content you're creating is you know, because the basis of humor is empathy. So why I'm successful and why I've been successful 6,500 times, 30 years is I learned that early on. It wasn't so much about my sense of humor. That was the genesis of the material. That's where I came up with these ideas and thoughts. But always had to kind of then go, how is this information going to be digested and absorbed by my audience? Because that's what I'm creating this for. You know, I think when people think about humor, they think about the art form, like Hollywood, you know. I mean, that's very subjective. You know, I'm going to come out here, I'm going to do my act. You're either going to like it or you're not. And the ones who like it, you will now come into my fold. The people who don't like it, you can go suck an egg. In the business world, we can't do that at all, you know. So I think the way I've always approached this is a great way, whereas a regular comedian might not be able to teach you, you know, how to use humor for your business. I've always thought about it that way because I've always thought about the customer, always thought about the end user. Who is this content for? And how can I make it as impactful as possible? Because that's the other thing is that we want to not only engage them, but we want to be memorable. You know, all the science is there about that. If you deliver your message, maybe 10 to 20% of anything anyone hears over the course of the day is remembered. You embed that message in humor, it goes up to 50 or 60%. Because, you know, it's another stat I love. It's on the front page of my website. Children laugh 400 times a day. Did I ever tell you this one? I don't know. Adults laugh. You know how many times adults laugh? Now, don't use yourself as an example because you're a cackling monkey most of the time.
True. Yeah. What is the average?
The average, well, the initial data came out and said adults laugh 3 times a day.
No.
People freaked. I actually sat on a panel with the guy who did this study, and he said people freaked out. They couldn't. It just conveyed what a joyless society we've created. When the average is 3, that means half the people are crying. You know, they're in the negative zone. You know, laughter isn't even an option for them during the day. So then they came out and said, okay, it was 11 to 15, and then people were like, okay, I can live with that. When you're like, we start off laughing 400 times a day in this beautiful, joyful environment, and then when we're grown up, we're like, 11 will get it done, you know. But 3, you know, I don't want to hear about 3, but 11 gets it done. But think about over the number of interactions we have over the course of the day, whether they're virtual, in person, or you know, any other way we get these things. But if your message is now wrapped in humor, and you actually make them feel something, and then break through to the subconscious, which we'll get into here in a second. They're going to remember you. I mean, there's no way they're going to forget you because it's easy to forget the ones that were just information because that's kind of how we are now. When we live in the conscious mind, in the old days, there wasn't much in there. You know, I mean, you know, even when I talk to companies, you know, and I do this on a bunch of different levels, whether I'm working with entrepreneurs or corporations to use it externally the same way entrepreneurs do, or internally for corporate culture and you know, kind of to get people to think about people as people again, you know, and humor is a great way to do that. But you think of the number of things that we have to kind of process on a daily basis. There's no room for your stuff in there. However, the subconscious is wide open. If you can break through there, and inside there lives every human emotion, every thought, and every feeling that you've had since birth. You know, and it also burns it into the mental hard drive so it can be remembered later. Whereas if it's in the conscious, only if you decide, not you as a person, but you inside your head decide that that's important and valuable, then it'll transfer to the subconscious. But as a comic, I've always lived and played in the subconscious of these people's minds anyway. So I know how to get there a lot quicker than you do. And most of the time, if you do, it'll just be, you know, by luck. You know, you caught that person at the right time during the day when they actually wanted to sit there and, like I said, be in the moment.
Yeah, I'll just summarize that because there was multiple good things going on there that
Yeah,
Matt
yeah, yeah.
said.
No, please go with
So
it.
to summarize for the trainers out there, few things going on. Number one, what Matt is really good at is the science of comedy. So there's plenty of funny people out there, and they may be funny, and that's all well and good, but they may not be able to break down why they're funny and show you how to do it. And that's Matt's biggest strength. But also just on comedy in general, like I found this a lot on my sales calls, right? Because nobody likes just you giving them a call in the middle of the day and
No,
trying to sell them something. But if you can crack a joke or two and make them laugh, the transition is unbelievable because, as Matt said, that's probably the only time they're going to laugh that whole day. So I've gone from annoying them to almost making their day. And it just makes it so much more memorable. But I want to delve even a little bit more, Matt, on the social media side of things. Let's get
sure.
very specific to social media because
Yeah,
this is, I think, the power. We all know how powerful social media is. I think
yeah,
humor is the missing ingredient. Let's hear your
absolutely.
101 on social media and
Yeah.
humor, and we'll sort of go from there.
Absolutely. And you know what? If you were watching your own videos, not you specifically, but all of us out there, when I watch these videos, my first question to them is, would you watch this? And if for whatever reason, we never really ask ourselves that question. When, and I remember somebody asked me, he goes, well, what did you think about what I did at 7 minutes? I go, if you still think anybody is watching this thing at 7 minutes, you are so delusional and out of your mind. Now we can strategically, develop content and build this video so that people are still watching it 7 minutes. But if you think the kindness of strangers exists all in social media, if one thing we've learned about social media, that is not the case. If Facebook ever did decide to put a thumbs down button, you would have way more interaction with your audience than you have right now. But it is entertainment. I mean, and the data there is even scarier than some of the data I've given you about the attention span and things like that. In 2 years, in 2020, 80% of the content consumed on Facebook is going to be video. Okay, so you now, entrepreneur out there, boot camp person, personal trainer, who, you all look like movie stars, but you know what? You haven't spent your lives developing the skills it takes to be good on camera, to really tell your story in a succinct, effective way. And humor, the great thing about humor is it's all about brevity. It's about exaggeration and brevity. So it's about picking the right word to illustrate, the idea or concept that you have. So you become a real good wordsmith. You become a real effective user of words, which you need to do in these videos. When I sit there, I'm like, remember, time is our enemy. Our tongues are our enemy because we're so used to telling these stories to our friends who won't click away. Imagine if we had that in real life, in the future, where you're going to be able to just scroll down in real life, or like Tinder, just swipe them away, But we have that ability with Facebook, but it's a powerful tool because you know what, it's out there working when you're not. But you've got to make sure that thing is as engaging and entertaining. Otherwise, if you're going to a YouTube video, and even if it was 2 YouTube videos about how to change the oil in your car, and I always say this, in case of a tie, the funnier person is going to win. So I will go on YouTube sometimes because I try to be handy or whatever. But even that, I'm only going there for the information. I want to know how to put up a bookshelf. But even in that case, I want to learn how to put up a bookshelf from the more entertaining person, even though it doesn't have anything to do with anything. But that's how we're programmed now. When we sit down and watch something, we are judging it the same way we would watch a movie or a film. And I know that's a lot of pressure to put on a new entrepreneur, but most people don't even think about it at all because everyone says, and we joke about this all the time, if I see one more video of somebody sitting in their car or driving and talking and doing their video, the only reason I'm engaged is I just want to see if this guy drives off the road, or he gets a ticket, but what he has to say isn't necessarily memorable or impactful. Social, you are in the entertainment business, whether you want to be or not. You have got to accept that. And the delivery system. When people ask me, oh, do you like social media? I'm like, who in their right mind outside of a bikini model would love social media? It's like, who wants to put themselves out there every single day for just, because that's the time, I wouldn't like jousting either. I'm glad I didn't grow up during jousting times. I wouldn't want to be hitting the chest with a big long wooden spear. But you know what? That was the times, So everyone goes, oh, you got to do social media. And you absolutely do. But if you're going to waste the time, you're going to go on there to do it, you need to be strategic about it because, like as we talked about for boot camp people, you know, it's a fine line between growing your business and doing all this work, doing all this effort, and being alone doing planks in the park by yourself, you know, or worse than that, one person shows up to your boot camp. You know, to me, that's the scariest. It's almost like in a comedy show. If I had to do a comedy show for one person, you know, we'd just cancel the show. Like there's got to be at least 10 of them in there for us to even attempt to show. But boot camp, I wonder if you got to go through the whole damn boot camp. And now, worse than that, when one person shows up, you got to be that guy's partner. You know. So you're going to get real familiar with that person. So, you know, again, you have to do it. But in the beginning, it's kind of like I talk about a photo. Just a photo used to be a big deal. If somebody had a photo, people would grab it and look at it and go, "Oh my goodness, you have a photo. You have a photo. This is amazing." You know, and in the beginning of social media, it was kind of just like if you were on there doing anything on social media, you know, that you got some credit for at least doing that, you know. But now there's so many people, you know, your butcher is on social media trying to grab their attention. You know, your dog walker is on social media trying to get their attention. You've got to fight through everything else. Even if your message is incredible, you know, if it doesn't break through and get to them, you are going to be, you know, alone in the park, as we say, you know.
I want to even just I love that point you say, Matt, where you say, in case of a tie, the funnier person wins. I want to go,
and nobody refutes that, which is amazing.
I want to go even further still. If I'm going to buy something and there's two products and one product is better than the other, but the person trying to sell me the better product is a bit of an asshole. However, the person trying to sell me the worst product is funny and makes me laugh. I think I'm even going to buy the worst product, even though I know it's the worst product, because I like that person better because they're funny and they're likable and they make me laugh. So I think that's, I even go further. I think not even in a tie, if you're slightly worse, that can get you over the line.
It makes up for a lot of, it makes for more room for error, you know. I mean, it's, you know, you build up a lot of goodwill. And there is, again, science about this. The reason that happens is that if you use humor and you actually connect with the audience using the science of humor because of how we're programmed as people, is that you will be able to gain their trust. You will seem more authentic. All the things that everyone has to go to one person for. I'm going to help you with your business be more authentic. I'm going to help you be more genuine. I'm going to help you gain more trust. I'm going to help you be more memorable. Humor does all of that because it's hardwired into who we are as DNA. Everything else, you're just basically going, oh, well, this kind of worked for a bunch of other entrepreneurs who are not you, you know, who didn't climb Mount Everest or beat cancer or whatever their story was that helps them gain, because we're connecting with them on a human subconscious level. And humor does so many of those things. So it's not why we want to do business with the person who's funnier is that we trust them more, even though we may not even think they're smarter, because the data now suggests that people who can make someone laugh, they are perceived as being more intelligent than the people who can't. And that becomes a more effective use of words and delivering the message. So, you know, when it comes to social media, for sure, because I think people only think they're competing with other boot camps, or they're competing with other personal trainers or other people in the fitness space. But we're all fighting for their minutes, for their seconds, for their eyeballs. So it's engage or die. And if you can't do that, you are going to fail. And or make it so much harder. Like we joke about in the old days when you had to go out there and promote your business by dropping flyers into people's houses and you know, getting run off by crazy dogs, and you know, and then people pull out the flyer and they're like, oh, this isn't a takeout menu, and throw it away. You know, I mean, you know, you spent all this money, time, and energy. So, you know, social media is so powerful. Things like this podcast are so powerful, but you've got to be funny. And the reason being is that once you've made them laugh, it's almost like Pavlov's dog, is that they will keep listening because they think another joke is coming. Remember, they're only going to get 11 of those a day. So you know what? You gave them one, they're like, oh my God, this might be pay dirt. You know, I might be able to live for a week off this bastard, you know. So I think understanding it is good, because we want them to think differently, but then we need them to act differently. And then maybe we want to get into that and actually, because you know firsthand, you know, how when you come to me with an idea, the first thing I do is try to find out where the truth in that message is. So we figure out how we're going to engage them. But until you figure out how to kind of do that, I always lead with the truth. I always think an ounce of truth is worth more than a pound of lie. So, you know, instead of, you know, watching somebody else's video and go, oh, I'm going to try to be like them, you're dead. You're dead. You're dead that way. You know, you've got to be you. Find out why people like you in real life. Those funny stories that you have that work in your real life, bring them into your business. You know, I mean, those are not for your friends and family anymore, because there's no difference between your friends and family and your network and of your customers or people you want in your boot camp. You want to talk about, you know, and I know I say a lot of things that I appreciate you summarizing it, but you're in the experience. Forget about just the social media part of it. But then if you make your boot camp more fun and funny and more engaging, then you can use that content. You know, we talked about this last week, where if the boot camp is crap, then and you post videos of that, then, you know, you've just got a bunch of people doing push-ups for 5 minutes. You know, I mean, believe me, nobody's going to watch that. You know, nobody, even on the toilet, even if internet went down, that was the only thing they could watch. They're not going to watch that, you know. So.
Yeah, 100%. I like how you also mentioned the training and boot camp side of that as well, because social media is a new side of things, but even just in life, if you've got two trainers, it's the same thing. You could
Absolutely
be a better trainer than the next person, but if you're boring as crap, they're not going to come back. And this is what I've noticed more, and this is more a retention side of things, right? Especially, this is specific to fitness now. When people originally sign up for a boot camp or a personal trainer, it is the motivation to get in shape. There's something going on where they're like, hey, I can't handle this anymore. I'm going to do whatever it takes. So I'm going to stop eating carbs for the rest of my life. I'm going to wake up at 4 a.m. for the rest of my life. That lasts about 2 weeks, okay? If they don't enjoy it and they do that and it's boring as crap, they're not coming back. That motivation lasts about 2 weeks. Then maybe a year later, they'll try again. However, if they come to that boot camp and it's fun and it's engaging and they like you and they have a good time, they're going to that's what's going to keep them there. So humor and likability is so important in the fitness side of things. And I was hoping just to touch on also, Matt, just in life, what are some advantages you've found? Now, let's even forget about business, forget about social media, forget about boot camps. What are some advantages you've found in just general life that humor's helped you with?
Well, I mean, I've gotten out of over a dozen speeding tickets in my life. I don't even know what that's like to get a speeding ticket, and I'll get to that. I'll close, kind of not close, but I'll end this little question with that one. But I've never not gotten an upgrade. I've never. I mean, you know, throughout my whole life, I realized that if I can make a real connection with this person, because that's where humor comes from. Its basis is in empathy, so it's a form of communication to let people know that we're happy, we're content, and that, you know, things are fine. Now, on the flip side of that is, you know, like those two masks that we always see, the comedy and tragedy. Tragedy and sadness is also another human emotion that we've been given, and we use that as a form of communication, especially when we're infants. I want to be held. My diaper's full. You know, it's too hot in here. It's too cold in here. Your food sucks. You know, whatever it is. So, you know, it is one of these kind of basic things. So in real life, it'll get you what you want because you're making a real human connection with that person. I can never get out of a speeding ticket because the officer is not going to let me out of a speeding ticket. But if I connect with him as a human being, Jim might. And if I don't try to lie to him and I use humor to diffuse a negative situation and that sort of thing. So early on, I realized it wasn't about my sense of humor, but if I could make that person laugh, if I could make that person feel, they will do whatever I want. Trust me, my wife is way out of my league, you know? And the only thing is, you know, I mean, granted, she is from Eastern Europe where this might be sexy, but she, you know, I made her laugh. You know, the second I met her, I made her laugh the first time. I've continued to make her laugh. I do 10 minutes before dinner every night to just so that she keeps laughing because so I, you know, I mean, everything what can you get out of it? It gave me a life. I mean, a life that I could never possibly dream of, because that's my arrangement with the world. Now, your arrangement with the world as a PT or boot camp person or accountant or whatever it is I'm going to be an expert in my field, and that was fine for 6 billion years. You could be the best blacksmith in town, and there'd be a line outside your blacksmith door with customers that wanted to come in and just wanted to become a blacksmith. We have changed. We have become something else. Where now it's, like I said, the funnier person is, and it's almost like I know I can turn it on and off. Like I've built the science so well that if I'm on a plane and I see people rushing to the counter, like our flight got canceled, and literally everybody's going out, and there's half of us are staying here till tomorrow. A bunch of other ones are going to be at this airport for 12 hours, but there's going to be 5 or 6 people that these people are going to want to go out of their way to help. I know I'm going to be one of those people. I know I'm always going to get home 12 hours, if not 24 hours earlier than everyone else, because they're only going to walk up there and bitch and complain and do all the other things, as opposed to using the power of humor. In this situation, these people are not expecting anybody to walk up and try to make them laugh. I do, so I get what I want. So yeah, I think, you know, in dating or social situations, but understand why humor is there. And I don't know in Australia versus America, but it's been taken from us through political correctness, through the kind of bad uses of it. And one thing you have to understand about humor is that people only laugh for 2 reasons. And then once I start breaking down the science, the problem when you say science is it makes it real scary. People are like, oh, but again, we're talking about humor science. First of all, something that's inside all of us that, you know, that we're only looking to get back to, because like I said, it's been taken from us. So, and its purpose in the human experience is so important, because it's a way we deal with stress. So, you know, what it is the buildup of nervous energy, which we all have coming from us in all directions. Humor releases that nervous tension, either if you're directly speaking about the thing that's driving them crazy, like traffic. If we sit there and talk about Sydney traffic, everyone's going to, because people will laugh out of commonality or superiority. So, you know, when it comes to your boot camp, you know, superiority, I would always say if there's a victim in the joke and it's not you, don't tell that joke. It ain't worth the risk, especially in this politically, you know, correct environment. But, you know, if you're comparing things, like why your boot camp is better than the guy down the street boot camp, or why you as a trainer is better than some other trainer, then superiority might work as you know, as a form of material. But the real power is going to be in commonality. And one thing you talked about, retention. It is so hard to get a client. I don't care what business you're in, you know, in this day and age. So you want to do as much as you possibly can to keep that client and create that experience where they're going to come there. If they know they're going to come to one boot camp and they're going to laugh and have a good time, or they're going to go to another boot camp and get the crap beat out of them, you know, which boot camp are they going to go to? You know, and I think, you know, that's the problem, is once you lose a client, even though I know you have some tremendous ways of teaching them how to get them, but I hold on to those sons of bitches. I ain't never letting you go. I tell you that right now. I hold on to a client. I make sure that the experience becomes an amazing thing for them. So yeah, but if that's your approach to it, where you go, okay, listen, and I think humor has been too much perceived as it's something that only certain people can use. And that is such a fallacy. That, you know what, Jim's a funny guy, so Jim gets an easy walk through life because, you know, people think Jim is funny and we're going to give, you know, but we all have it. It's inside all of us. There's not one person that is inherently born funnier than someone else. We've said that before, but we're all born funny. Babies are hilarious. But you know what? You know, they may not have the funniest parents in the world. Thank God they didn't have a true Iranian parents to kind of, there was beauty to that dysfunction, is what I always say.
Okay, cool. Well, hey, Matt, one thing you mentioned there, which I'd love for you to give us a few tips on, and then a few tips in general, that getting out of the car ticket, because they get me all the time. If you could give us a few tips to help the listeners there. And then the follow-on from that is maybe just a few tips in general that they can help with their videos to be funnier, or their sessions to be funnier.
Sure. Well, the cop one is a great example of just thinking about the audience in the way that you should be thinking about them, whether it's a speeding ticket or it's a video or it's a talk or whatever, or anything it is that you have to understand empathy. Remember, you have to understand, why is the traffic stop such a stressful situation for that police officer? And I went to go find that out. And from doing a bunch of cop shows, I found out that that's the time when they're most likely to be killed. Okay, it's not like the movies where it's going to happen in a bank robbery or some shootout where they're both running off a cliff to jump onto the helicopter. That's in the movies. In the real thing, he pulled over the wrong person and they shot him or her. Okay, so you have to understand that that's what the situation is as he's walking up to the car. You can now do things to either lower the anxiety level or raise the anxiety level, like reaching for your seatbelt and because all he does is see you from the back doing this. He doesn't know what that is. Reaching for the glove compartment to get your license, not rolling down your window. So I take all those negative situations, start off in a positive place. I have my hands on the steering wheel. The thing is down. I have my sunglasses off. Okay. When he walks up to the car, here's my opportunity, because I've already lowered the threat level here, that he's not expecting me. He's expecting me to lie to him or come up with some excuse or call him an asshole. That's a big thing in America now. We'll call him like that's going to help your situation. So when he walks over to the car, he's like, I pulled you over. I'm like, yeah, I was really flying, wasn't I? I didn't even know the car could get up that fast on this road, until I saw you in the bushes. You're really good at bush hiding, and I don't necessarily say that, but some version of that. But I always own the situation and own the thing that I did wrong, because now he's like, okay, but if you lie to him, then you think you're going to outlie. Like, everyone think, oh, you got out of a ticket because you're good at talking your way out of stuff. No, I'm good at connecting with human beings, and that's why, that's why it's fine. So first of all, you understand the situation. And when he pulls you over and you've already got your hands on the steering wheel, he knows that you actually care about him. You actually, what? And now he's going to care about you. So, and I got out of 2 in the same night. I remember I got pulled over the first time and I talked my way out of it. And then, and connected with them, and he let me off. And then it was like a half hour later, I get pulled over again. And I'm like, what kind of idiot doesn't learn his lesson? You just got pulled over a half hour ago. I go, I know this stuff works really well, but it might not work this time. I've never tried it twice in one night. And but I did it again, and sure enough, the guy let me off. And I mentioned to him that I had just gotten pulled over a half hour ago, which is risky because, the guy might perceive me as, a habitual speeder or something like that. But he just kind of looked at me like a regular person who, sometimes, didn't learn his lesson the first time. But I told him, I said, I guarantee I'm going to learn there's no way I'm getting pulled over 3 times in one night. It's just, I don't trust the science that much. But again, I tried to connect with him as a person because, as I say, the officer may not let you off, but Jim can. And if you go through your life trying to make real human connections with people, and that is a lot harder, I'm finding, without humor. Because if I go, okay, don't use humor. Make me a video that's going to be engaging where you're not using humor. That is now a very impossible task. It wouldn't work for you. So humor is our best first choice, for a lot of these things, whether you're getting pulled over by the police or you're trying to grow your boot camp, because the basis of it is empathy, and you thinking about people as people is, again, unfortunately, very sad. I don't know in Australia, but in America, it's a very sad state of affairs that, that I am able to do all of this, through something as easy as humor, when everyone else, doesn't even, it's almost we go out of our way to pretend that we don't exist as people, but that's only in our conscious mind. That's a new development in the human experience. But humor has been there for 6 billion years. It's going to be here for another 6 billion years. And, unless you have, unless you can juggle or do magic, I don't know how else you're going to be able to connect with these people. So, and then you had a second part of that one, which was, how do they do it? Okay, so how do you do it? Understand that it's there already, and you're doing it. Okay, you may not be doing it strategically in your business when you sit down to that video, but trust me, when you go on a date and you tell your story to somebody, you're doing it. You're doing exactly because you care at that point. Even though it's weird because you go, this is about my business and everything else. You only have to be better, slightly better than what everyone else is doing, and what everyone else is doing is shit. Okay, understand? I'm not judging them. I've done it over 6,500 times, where the expectation was laughter. Okay, so when people go, oh, I don't know if I can use humor, I'm like, I can make them laugh when they come in expecting to laugh. Okay, the beauty, the real power in humor in your world is they don't see it coming. They're not expecting it. So that's why it's even more powerful than the jokes I can tell, because they're sitting there expecting to be bored out of their mind by some video that you're in your car again, and then all of a sudden you say something that connects with them automatically. And now you've broken through all the noise, and you're now inside their subconscious. And what you do inside there and what you bring back is entirely up to you. Storytelling, the power of story. And the reason why story works versus information is that we use our subconscious. When another human being sits down and tells you a story, you now are listening with your subconscious. Because the reason we were told stories since the dawn of time was to learn something. So when somebody wants to tell you something and it's in the form of a story, you are now programmed and hardwired to listen more attentively, because probably this guy's going to be like, oh, by the way, I was over there by the purple bush. Don't eat those orange berries. They're going to give you the shits for a week, or whatever. But that's what we were expecting. We're expecting somebody to give us some information that we can use. So knowing that the power of story, is part of the human experience in that way, really is the way to think about it. And there is no humor, I believe, without story, and there is no story without humor. Meaning that the only way anyone's going to listen to your story is if you do embed. I'm not trying to teach everybody how to be stand-up comedians, but strategically place real conscious efforts to make people laugh throughout the course of the engagement of the video. And then make sure that the story, delivers the message that you're trying to deliver. I mean, just telling a story for story's sake is one thing, but finding the right story. And even if you're talking about boot camps, and you have a story about, and maybe you just want to talk about why your boot camp experience, why you care more, than the other person. It doesn't necessarily have to be the story in the sense that, hey, I care more than this. I've been doing this for 20 years. There's other ways to tell that story without saying those facts. And then that's like when people ask me how I got into this business, I'm like, listen, I came out of the womb being able to make people laugh, and then now, they're pretty interested. I would like to hear about that. And I started doing this at 3 years old. But if I just came out there and said, hey, I've been telling jokes since I came out of my mother, and I've been doing it since I'm, but these are the things that if you just take information and deliver them as a story, it'll be really powerful. Always lead with your truth. Things that are embarrassing. This is why those stories work and gain trust. Because you know what? And that's what you are like the perfect person to work with, because you just put your vulnerability out there. I mean, because you see it as a value. I mean, it's how you're going to stand out versus someone else. And you're so authentic and genuine to start with. And I think if you start off in that place, these are the things that don't try to be something you're not. When I'm creating material for comedians, I taught stand-up comedy classes for years. And I said, when you're up there for 5 minutes, when it's going well, it's 5 short minutes. When it's not going well, it's 300 long-ass seconds. And that is the case with the videos. That is the case, whether you're speaking live. You've really got to just be more strategic about it. And always go, what is the engagement? How am I going to engage these people? If it's a mom, if you're speaking to a group of moms. And that's why it's really important, we talked about this before, about, figuring out who your audience really is. I love when I ask people, they go, who's your audience? And they'll go, anybody who's out of shape. Shit, that's everyone. It's okay. So maybe I should ask you, who's not your audience? The personal trainers, because they're already in shape. But people who are not in shape are your audience. How are you going to target them? How are you going to figure out? But just say your audience is busy moms. Now the jokes basically write themselves, because now you're basically creating material. If you are a busy mom, but now you understand who your audience is. My audience is vegans, and you know who it is. My audience is people who hate fitness, whatever it is. But you've got to figure that out, because then you can start figuring out what the content's going to be. So, I know people love that I would have a magic wand and be like, oh, just make fun of strawberries. They're hilarious. But it is about the audience. If you told me who the audience was, then it's easy to develop this content. Is my audience? We talk about this all the time, because you wear a lot of hats. At some point, you are the leading expert on the planet on boot camps. We wear that hat a lot, and we're delivering content to basically boot camp people and PTs. But then you're also this amazing entrepreneur, and now our audience is now entrepreneurs. But it still isn't everybody, because once we know that these are entrepreneurs, we know what they go through. We know what their fears are, what their joys are. So we really learned a lot about our audience. So that's the thing. So understand the power of story, and that once you figure out who your audience is, it's easy to kind of reverse engineer this content, because what are we trying to say? How are we going to engage them? And then what is the takeaway?
Love it. And I'll summarize that too. My opinion there, easiest way to get good at comedy fast is actually to contact Matt. Just go straight to his website. Go to, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, but it's www.theylaughyouwin.com. I can't recommend that enough. I understand the power of humor. I've hired Matt, and since I have, the interaction in my videos have gone through the roof. And here's another, that's what I recommend everyone do. The second thing I recommend you do is make a conscious effort to do it. When I was running boot camp, I would always make a conscious effort. Okay, here's the workout, great, but where are the jokes in there? right? What's going to make people laugh? And I would sit down and purposely plan the jokes in there, and I would make it look like I just came up with them on the spot, but I'm not that smart. I'm not that smart to come up on the spot, but I would sit down beforehand and write these jokes. So that's, and also, and I guess the other thing as well, like, just give it a crack, right? I know we tease about, how hard, but look, these days, everyone's got a smartphone. Get your phone out, give it a practice, see what happens. If it's crap and it sucks and nobody likes it, sit down. Why was it crap? Analyze some of these other funny people. Matt actually told me this story. He told me a Jerry Seinfeld joke, and I've used it on every date I've gone on, and it works a charm. It's because I found this really nice Chinese restaurant, right?
Okay.
And whenever I'm going to go on a new date, I take the woman to this Chinese restaurant, and they bring the chopsticks out. And this is a Jerry Seinfeld joke. I heard it from Matt, but Jerry Seinfeld joke. I pretend like I came up with it. And I'm like, chopsticks, you use chopsticks? They're usually like, yeah, I don't mind using chopsticks. I'm like, yeah, I don't quite get it. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, they've seen the fork, and there hasn't been not one person that hasn't just cracked up with that. So dates as well, it helps. But anyways, hey, we got to sort of wrap up there, Matt. What I was hoping to finish up with, now you're my go-to person for comedian, and I recommend everyone else go to you, whether it's your website, they look you up on YouTube. But where do you go, Matt? Who's the funniest person or the funniest people that you like to listen to or watch, or tell us about those people. Give us the one-on-one.
The comedians that actually make comedians laugh are usually, maybe not the mainstream comedians. There's an amazing comedian from Australia, Jim Jeffries, who's making a big, huge splash here in America. And it's funny because we have John Oliver, who's British, and James Corden, who's British, and we have some Australians and some Trevor Noahs from South Africa. Because Americans will let people call them on their shit if they are not from America. And Jim Jeffries just takes because when you're not from here and you come and look at America from what it is from the outside, it's hilarious. My wife is, from Eastern Europe, and her perspectives on how we live here is pretty hilarious. So, but Jim Jeffries is not everybody's cup of tea. I mean, this guy is taking on religion and politics and social, norms and the like. But for me, with the old school comedians, because in the old days, we did have one comedian, Bob Hope, for example, or Shecky Green. These are old Catskill comedians, but old comedians in America. But it was one comedian that made the whole family laugh. Now the whole family, everyone has their own comedian. Mom has her favorite comedian because she's a mom comedian, and dad has his favorite comedian because it's this, and the kids have their favorite comedian. But in the old days, it was one guy. So I go back to these old Catskill comedians, but contemporaries, a guy named Brian Regan. Probably, and a lot of my teachings come from what I call the 3 rings of stand-up comedy. And I broke out each ring, which is why, yes, if you need help and you don't want to take this, first of all, I am your best first choice. But and I wouldn't even try to take this on by yourself. Because I broke down each one of these rings, I know why people laugh. I know, how I can get you there. But Brian Regan is one of the best I've ever seen at blending all 3 rings. He was an incredible performer, amazing material, and actually knew how to do the job as a public speaker. Because at its foundation, that's all you're doing. You're conveying your message, whether it's via video, live, or Facebook Live or live in front of them. But I go back to old school people, silent comedians. But probably the biggest effect when I was a kid, I listened to these old records. Mel Brooks. I don't know if you know who this guy is, but he's done he's 90-some odd years old now. But in the 60s, him and another guy named Carl Reiner did these radio records called The 2,000-Year-Old Man. And it was about this man that they found that was 2,000 years old. And he played this character like he knew Jesus, and he knew Napoleon, and he just told these amazing stories. And there were 5 records. And so I think anytime I want to learn about timing and something about comedy is you want to be heavy-handed and gentle at the same time. These are not, easy things to pull off. Mel Brooks in these 2,000-Year-Old Man records pulled it off as good as anyone I've ever seen in my life. So, I'm pretty eclectic when it comes to that. So I'd say, watch who you like. But you have a great guy in this guy, Jim Jeffries, who's becoming this huge star in America, and nobody seems to know who he is in Australia. I think that's crazy to me.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, hey, Matt, that's all we've got time for today. Is there anything
Sure.
I missed or anything you want to add to finish up?
Other than, like, I think you do a great job of telling your audience that this is not going to happen through osmosis. I
Mm.
mean, it's going to take effort. It's going to take you consciously doing it. However, if you don't, what is your plan? You
Mm.
got to have a plan for this. Facebook Lives, this could be a little daunting, but social media itself, Instagram, all these things. I know as trainers, it's not always the thing you want to do, but I would say the same thing. We've worked together on courses for you on how trainers can step up their social media game. I think, do that, give me a call, and let's take on the world, because, you don't want to be in the park by yourself. We've learned anything about that. And even worse, you don't want to be out there with one person. So.
Love it. Love it. All right. Well, Matt, thank you very much for your time. If anyone's interested in chatting to Matt, www.theylaughyouwin.com. I'll also put that link in the podcast description. Thank you, Matt.